He was in the transfer portal. Now he's not. Defensive tackle David Stone is no longer an option for Miami, but let's talk about where the Hurricanes will turn next.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. I am Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about players Miami seems to be in the mix for, including, this is something that I've wanted, I think we've all wanted, an elite kick returner, also happens to play wide receiver, is in that portal, and Miami is believed to be a player for this one. We'll talk about other targets at positions like receiver, safety, running back, defensive line, even though the big news came out last night, Easter Sunday evening. This was a great Easter present for the Oklahoma fans. It's a big kick in the Easter eggs for the rest of us. David Stone, former five-star defensive tackle, 3 years of eligibility remaining. On Friday night, Stone, who was, and is again an Oklahoma Sooner, on Friday night decided to enter the transfer portal. A lot of that had to do apparently with an NIL dispute. We'll discuss that. But then by Sunday evening, Stoney made the announcement he's sticking with Oklahoma. So here's what went down. So after, it was a quiet, true freshman season for Stone. And listen, a lot of times when you're talking about interior defensive linemen, it really takes more than a year to really break out at that position. I think Stone, as Oklahoma has figured out and is willing to accept now, is probably set for a breakout this coming year. But after his quiet, true freshman season, Oklahoma essentially forced him to take an NIL pay cut back in December. That was something Stone agreed to at the time, clearly was not happy about it. And then he worked his tail off in the weight room and in spring practices, had a really good spring. Brent Venables, the Oklahoma head coach, acknowledged that. He improved his stock, showed major strides in March and April, and I think Stone thought he put himself in a strong position to renegotiate. Now, Oklahoma didn't budge, this according to reports on the Sooner side. Oklahoma was going to hold him to the pay cut that they made him take back in December. So Stone decided to hit the portal, which was not well received, I think, by Oklahoma fans and apparently by the Oklahoma locker room. They didn't want to see Stoney go. And so then Oklahoma budged. They did renegotiate a new deal for David Stone. And as of Sunday night, Stone is going to be staying in Norman, Oklahoma, right? And so obviously that takes a chess piece off the board for Miami. Miami was believed to be a school of interest, especially since the Hurricanes, as we talked about on Saturday, Miami came in second in his recruitment out of high school to Oklahoma, was also seeing some buzz that Ohio State was trying to become a player for Stone. But this is the last I'll say about it because he's not in the portal. He's not an option for Miami. So we move on. Okay, so here's what we're looking at now at defensive tackle for the Hurricanes, available players. Now, someone who I think is an awesome player who, I hope Miami can really get in the mix for. I wouldn't see Miami as the leader at this moment, but Syracuse former, he's going to be a sophomore this year, but was a freshman All-American last season, Murad Watson, 6'3", 313-pound, very productive defensive tackle. Now, on Watson, this is a name to know, but I'd like you to know that there's been some early buzz for the Ohio State Buckeyes here for the Syracuse standout. So I'm not sure how high Miami is in the rankings there. We'll have to monitor this one in the upcoming days. There's been some Ohio State noise there. Now, a player that there's obviously been Miami noise for, and we've talked about him in our last couple of episodes, is Boise State defensive tackle Braxton Feely, who's experienced, 1 year of eligibility remaining, a natural pass rusher from the interior. This is the defensive tackle that Miami has the most traction with so far, and he's going to be visiting this week, I believe Thursday, possibly as soon as tomorrow. He's already visited Cal, but Feely is going to be visiting Miami as well. And, but what Miami is looking for here is, another trusted member of their defensive tackle rotation, because I believe it's not quite deep enough in terms of trusted, proven talent. So that is what Miami is trying to accomplish here, okay? Now, there's a new option at running back. And again, running back's an interesting one for Miami because they've got some studs at the top of their rotation. There's not enough guys. 4 scholarship running backs right now for the Hurricanes. Mark Fletcher, Jordan Lyle at the top. We believe they can be an excellent duo this coming season in the ACC. Chris Wheatley-Humphrey is your next scholarship running back. Not a whole lot of experience. The Hellcat did come off a pretty good spring, so hopefully, and I think he could be ready to step up and play a bigger role this year. And then you've got a true freshman with a very bright future, but a true freshman in Gerard Pringle. Those are your only 4 scholarship running backs. Now, I also think that in Terrell Walden, walk-on running back, who's been very good at that role for the past few years at the U. This is a guy who, could potentially earn some playing time in real game situations. But I think Miami wants to add a 5th scholarship running back. And here's one that is now firmly in the mix. The Hurricanes are going to be hosting for a visit North Dakota State running back Shemar Brown. Was one of the top players at the FCS level last year. Remember, Miami's in an interesting spot because they're not looking for another Damian Martinez. Like last year, they were looking for a bona fide top line power 4, power 5 at the time guy. Miami's looking for a solid rotational option, but obviously you want somebody hungry coming in here, pushing the rest of the room. And I believe Shemar Brown could be that. 5'11", 200 pounds at the FCS level, of course. Rushed for 1,181 yards, so almost 1,200 yards, scored 15 touchdowns, went for 4.8 yards per carry last year. He actually won the Jerry Rice Award last season. He's one of the top players at the FCS level, period. That award goes to the top FCS freshman. So Shemar Brown had a really good season last year at North Dakota State. He's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. So that's a running back who's going to be visiting Miami. Now, we mentioned kick returners. Here's an interesting one that Miami seems to be trending positively for, and that's Keelan Marion out of BYU. 6 foot tall, 195-pound wide receiver, and kick returner, which I think is the primary spot where he shines. Marion took 2 kickoffs to the house last year, was the first player to do that in a season at BYU since the 1990s. Pete Nakos of On3, who's all over transfer portal, he said, quote, I see Miami being a big factor here for Marion. There's mutual interest, we believe. We know Miami is interested in both returners and receivers. Here's a 2 birds, 1 stone possibility for the Hurricanes. So keep your eyes on Keelan Marion from BYU. And, oftentimes, folks, if you want to see how productive a player was, when a player hits the portal, you want to see what the fan base of that team is saying. Are they saying, well, the guy was overrated, he wasn't developing here, good riddance to him? The BYU faithful are not happy about the idea of losing Keelan Marion. And speaking of BYU, here's a player I almost forgot to mention. They've got an excellent linebacker who's available in the transfer portal as well, who actually has history with Mario Cristobal. Keep your eyes on Harrison Tagert. He was a starter, I should say, for BYU. He's got a year of eligibility left, 2 years of eligibility left, actually. 6'1", 235-pounder, 69 tackles last year, a sack, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, 3 passes broken up, and an interception last season. Now, the connection for Harrison Tagert, and guys, again, Miami, I believe, is in the market and should be in the market for at least 1 linebacker here in the transfer portal. You talk about relationships. So Harrison Tagert initially signed and played with Oregon before transferring to BYU. And the head coach at the time when he was being recruited and signed to play for the Oregon Ducks was Mario Cristobal. And Tagert, somebody dug up an old social media post of him, praising and complimenting Coach Cristobal at the time when Mario left for Miami. So there's another player at a connection with the coaches at a position of need. Keep your eyes out on Harrison Tagert as well. Other receivers Miami has shown interest in, and we believe to be at least some mutual interest. Trayshawn Hurry out of San Jose State. It's very productive there. And Trevor Pena, of course, from Syracuse. Now, Pena, I think Hurry just visited Louisville, so we'll see if anything happens there, if there's serious movement. Pena just had a very good visit to Penn State. We'll have to see if he makes it down to the U. Now, it's funny because reading some of the accounts of Pena's visit to Penn State, the Penn State reporters are saying, like, in no way, shape, or form is this guy asking for $2 million. Like, it's not a real thing. So again, like, we did our whole rant last week about Fran Brown, the Syracuse coach, accusing Pena of chasing bags and chasing $2 million. Maybe Fran just didn't want to admit that Pena was a little bit concerned about how good the Syracuse offense is going to be this year and about his new quarterback, Ricky Collins. Now, Fran would want to downplay that stuff because he doesn't want anyone to think Syracuse's offense isn't going to be good next year. So maybe he decided to make it all about Pena chasing a bag. Well, you're not chasing bag. If he does, now listen, I would rather see Pena end up at Miami, but if he does end up at Penn State, he's not chasing bags because Penn State is notoriously not an overspender and a high bidder in NIL. They're very conservative with how they use their NIL funds. So we'll see what happens with Pena because they believe the visit with Penn State went very well. So Hurry is an outside receiver. Pena is a slot. Miami's bigger need is on the boundary. If Miami does end up bringing in Trevor Pena, it would be more of a luxury pickup, a guy who can add proven production, even if his specific body type is not as much of a need, because we know Miami's got some good slot receivers already here. Not as proven as Pena, but Ray Joseph had a really good spring, and he's been putting in the work for going on 3 years now at Miami. And Malachi Toney had an excellent spring, and Dalen Upshaw could end up playing a similar role as well. So Miami does have options there. So a guy like Pena would be more of a luxury pickup. We got some safeties to talk about on the other side, my friends, because there are some options out there. Plus, I'm going to be answering questions from you guys. We'll talk more about that if you want to become a Locked On Canes insider and get your questions to the front of the line. But are the Hurricanes, are they front runners to bring in a safety with connections to Miami's coaching staff? Come on down. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on Locked On Canes. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I will have a new episode tonight talking transfer portal, future of the ACC. Is the ACC bringing in talent to match outgoing talent? We'll have that and more for you, available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So we've already, a lot over the last week talked about one safety that has connections to the Miami coaching staff, being Greg Smith III out of Florida, right? He's got the connection with Will Harris. Will Harris, who is at the Gators coaching their defensive backs, is now at Miami, primarily focusing on the safeties at Miami. He and Zach Etheridge are co-DB coaches. So we have been on and will continue to be on Greg Smith watch. Now, Smith is a young, talented player, 6'4", almost 220 pounds, tremendous elite body type, not a lot of experience, right? He's got 4 years of eligibility remaining. So here's another safety who's available who has plenty of experience. I really like this guy. AJ Halsey out of Houston. He entered the transfer portal over the weekend. 6 foot tall, 215 pound, first team all Big 12 selection last year. 5 interceptions for AJ Halsey with the Cougars last year. And, something about AJ that I like, and I know Miami's coaching staff puts a premium on this. You can call him a safety, but he's got versatility because he can play free or strong safety. And here's another Miami connection, because at Houston, he played there for the last couple of years. He was coached by Zach Etheridge, who happens to now be co-defensive backs coach, cornerbacks coach at Miami. So that relationship, Etheridge, who was the position coach last year for Halsey, that relationship could give Miami an advantage here in his recruitment. Halsey's got 1 year of eligibility remaining. He began his career at New Mexico, transferred to Houston, and started every game in each of the past 2 seasons. Okay, so AJ Halsey is definitely someone to watch. And again, it's been a common theme throughout transfer portal recruiting. Players that Miami has connections with, either because they recruited them heavily out of high school and maybe came in second or third place, or in this case, guys who played for position coaches at Miami at their previous stop, makes him someone to watch for. Okay. All right, let's take some of you guys' questions now. And if you want to get your questions to the front of the line, we opened this edition up to social media and to the Locked On Canes insiders. But you want to become a Locked On Canes insider, I'll peer over that fence like Wilson in Home Improvement. Become a Locked On Canes insider, and you get text messages directly from my phone to yours and vice versa, with breaking news, show updates, transfer portal, and recruiting tidbits and nuggets. And you can get one-on-one questions and answers. So click the link in the show description below. Become a Locked On Canes insider. Try it free for 14 days. And then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value on there on the Locked On Canes insiders chat. We get this question from Mike, and this is a timely one. We were just talking about safeties. He says, hey, how did Zechariah Poyser look in the spring? Was a massive portal pickup and a guy that I'd like to talk about, Mike said. Zechariah Poyser had a great spring. So that, when we talk about the safety room, that's probably the guy that we feel best about. I mean, Miami lost Zaquan Patterson into the portal, which is unfortunate. He hadn't accomplished a whole lot yet, was heading into his second year, but this is truly someone who's got the physical traits that can develop into an awesome player. We're sorry to see Zaquan Patterson go, but in terms of who was the best safety in the spring, it was Poyser, the transfer from Jacksonville State. Dylan Day also had a pretty good spring, and Markeith Williams showed some improvements and some strides in spring. But, Poyser is someone who, I pencil in as a starter this year. We need to find another sure-hitting, sure-handed, sure-headed safety to add into that mix. But, Zechariah Poyser, I would say he was one of the better performers, in spring. I mean, when it came to the defensive backfield, and keep in mind, some guys were not that involved in spring due to injury. Like, we didn't see OJ Frederick much, but when it comes to like the top performers in the defensive backfield, probably Xavier Lucas and Zechariah Poyser were probably the top performers at those spots at cornerback and safety, respectively. We get this question from Jimmy. Says, hey, how many open slots are left on the Hurricanes roster after the latest losses in the transfer portal? Okay, so we know Miami has lost Nye Carr, receiver, Elias Rudolph, edge rusher, Zaquan Patterson, safety, Joshua Horton. Josh Horton, by the way, congratulations to him. He landed at Georgia. So back to the home state, massive program. Horton played at Langston Hughes High School in the Atlanta area. He's now a Georgia Bulldog. With Horton, unfortunately, here just was never healthy, and it affected his ability to get experience on the field and climb up the ladder in practice. Hopefully, he can get healthy and stay healthy at UGA. Those are the losses Miami's had. In terms of how many spots are open, Jimmy, you don't even know how complicated that question is. So first of all, Miami does not publish their official scholarship count, okay? We think, based on unofficial counting, that Miami's number of scholarships right now, players on scholarship on the football team, is around right at 80 or in the low 80s, okay? 85 used to be the limit on scholarships, but you've got that House versus NCAA settlement that's in court right now. They're trying to finalize that thing. The NCAA in that settlement, they're about to bring up the scholarship limit from 85 to 105 but then that's also a roster limit that could basically nuke the walk-on count, but programs can choose to have walk-ons and have a lower scholarship limit. So long story short, I don't know how many scholarship spots Miami would want to use. Perhaps they would have up to 105 available, and I think Miami is going to carry some walk-ons. They're going to have to decide how many. So let's assume Miami would be willing to bring in maybe up to about a half dozen transfers this month, right? So let's assume 1 to 2 receivers, right? Maybe if they bring in the guy who's the elite kick returner out of BYU, if they bring him in, you would still possibly want to. It's Keelan Marion. I don't want to forget his name. If you bring him in, you may still want to bring in another receiver to go along with him. So maybe 1 to 2 receivers you're looking to bring in, 1 to 2 defensive backs, probably 1 running back, maybe 1 defensive tackle, possibly a linebacker if a good one comes available and comes into focus for Miami. So, maybe anywhere from 5 to 7 transfer additions. Okay. Oh, this is a good question. If we can, I think this was from Jason, asked this question. If we can only get if we can get an impact player at just one position, he says, what position would you choose? Okay, Jason, I think my answer would be, if it can only be one, I'd probably go safety. I think there's probably the biggest need there. Because again, like, we're all talking about bringing in receivers, which has a lot to do with the youth of Miami's receiver room, because you lost Xavier Restrepo, who set records during his career. You lost Jacoby George and Sam Brown and Elijah Arroyo and Isaiah Horton, which was basically your top 5 producers in that area. I believe in the talent that Miami now has. CJ Daniels looks like he can be a player here. JoJo Trader had an awesome spring. Malachi Toney, Ray Joseph. We lost Nikar into the portal. So I can understand why, especially when you got Carson Beck as your quarterback, you want to maximize it. We can all talk about bringing in receivers, but I still think safety is probably the bigger need. You guys let me know what you think. Which do you think would be if we could only get one impact player at either of these positions, would you rather bring in a safety or a receiver? Let's talk about Carson Beck when we come back. And let's talk about Miami's running back rotation as well. Guys, you want to keep it locked right here. We're nowhere near done yet on this new episode of Locked On Canes. The only ticket app that I use is Game Time. I'm getting the best deals, the best features, the most convenience, and the best prices, which go down at the last minute on the Game Time app. There is nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Miami's got a couple of home games coming up against Cleveland. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Here's why I choose Game Time. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. And the all-in pricing feature means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. All one word, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, we get a question from MKNG. Is that Mike King? There's no vowels in your username, sir. MKNG. I don't know how to say that. I sound so old right now. He says, how is Carson Beck progressing? So here's what we do know. He's now been a week cleared to throw. He's on, last Monday, so he's now on day 8 of his clearance to throw the football. Beck is a pretty private guy. Miami's a pretty private program. I don't have any details on how those off-schedule workouts are going. Now, we know Miami players is not just a Miami thing. Around the country, they're allowed to have up to 16 player-led practices between now and the start of training camp, which usually starts in late July. And I would imagine they've had probably at least a couple of those already. Carson Beck also has the autonomy to be able to get his receivers and some of his teammates together to do informal workouts and throwing sessions. So I hope he's doing all of that, because he was put a little bit behind the 8 ball. Not only is he getting to know his teammates at a new program for the first time, these are not the guys he played with at UGA, so he's getting to know new teammates, and he also did not have the benefit of being cleared to throw during spring football. He's been cleared now for a week, so that's what we know. The health is good. Now, when it comes to how he's progressing, his recovery actually happened ahead of schedule, because at the time when he signed with Miami, the most optimistic of timelines would have had him being cleared to throw in April, right? The more pessimistic timeline said, hey, maybe this could go into May or June before the doctors decide to let him throw again. So on the health side, very positive stuff. And, if I can maybe sneak out to one of those player-led workouts and see how his arm looks, I will let you guys know. Okay, this is a good question about Keelan Marion, the BYU receiver and special teams ace. Nick asks, hey, wouldn't getting the BYU kid risk having Ray Joseph jump into the portal? He says, plus we only have 7 scholarship receivers. Wouldn't we need a minimum of 9 for secure depth? I'd like to have 9. As far as first of all, adding Marion, would that entice Ray to jump into the portal? I mean, first of all, I give Ray a ton of credit. That dude, he's got a different mentality from, the modern players of, 2025. A lot of times, hey, you bring in another guy who plays a kind of similar role that I play, I'm out. That's how a lot of players operate. Ray Joseph has an old school mentality, and he loves Miami, and he embraces competition. And also, I don't think bringing in Marion would be like a like for like thing. I mean, outside of the kick returning aspect, I don't necessarily see Marion taking too much, on-field playing time away from Ray Joseph. If you were going to talk about the guy that would threaten his status and his playing time, that would be Trevor Pena. That would be the one that, hey, if Miami brings in that guy, then that obviously would give, Ray Joseph something to think about. But I give Ray a ton of credit. You remember when he spoke to the media about a month ago, I was just blown away by his mental fortitude and his mentality. And I am rooting for Ray Joseph. I want to see that guy break out this year. By the way, we gotten some questions over the last few days, because I guess I haven't mentioned this young man's name enough, and that's probably shame on me. But people want to know, how is Armando Blunt doing on the defensive line? Because I don't bring his name up often enough. That's on me, guys. One person even asked, hey, Dono, you don't talk about Armando Blunt. Is he still on the team? Not only is Armando Blunt still on the team, he had a really, really good spring. Now, my viewing periods as a member of the media were limited, but I saw Armando looking good in the media viewing windows. And from guys you speak to who are either at practice for the duration, or more importantly, what Armando Blunt's teammates have been saying about him, right? Whether you talk to offensive linemen, the guys who go up against him in practice, or you talk to offensive line teammates of his like CC and Inez Cooper and Markel Bell, very complimentary of the way Armando is developing. I mean, you're talking about a physical freak at 260 pounds playing defensive end with so much power. And let's not forget, Armando Blunt, he's heading into his second year, but the dude just turned 18. He left high school a year early, reclassified from 2025 to 2024 to enroll with the Hurricanes. And yeah, I think Armando is doing really, really well. So I'm sorry for not bringing him up enough, because I should bring him up more often. All right, we get a question from the I Hate Football podcast, who seems to actually like football, because his whole timeline is football. I hate football? What's wrong with you? He says, is it totally crazy to think that the running back room could go number 1, Fletcher, number 2, Lyle, number 3, Hellcat, number 4, Pringle, number 5, Elijah Lofton, number 6, Terrell Walden? I don't think it's that crazy. Listen, again, out of the 6 guys that you mentioned, one of them's a tight end. who is, of course, Elijah Lofton, versatile enough to line up at running back. Another one is a good player, but a walk-on, right? I still think Miami could benefit from bringing in another experienced scholarship running back, which is why we were bringing up the player from North Dakota State, Shemar Brown. Why I think that would be a good option to bring in for depth purposes. And that seems like a guy who can play, not just add depth. But you're not crazy. I mean, Fletcher and Lyle at the top of the rotation, Hellcat probably being the number 3. You're not crazy about that. I don't even, again, you say you hate football. You seem to know a lot about football with a question like that. All right, we get this one. If Carson Beck thrives in Shannon Dawson's offense, do you still think Miami will rely more heavily on the running game? Because Beck is still trying to get that first-round draft grade back. Okay, so I get it. Like, Carson Beck wants to have a really good year to raise his draft stock into the first round. We all saw Cam Ward, different quarterbacks, but the situation last year, Cam Ward was getting maybe 5th-round grades, was able to raise his draft stock first round. He's about to be the first overall pick in a few days. We'll talk more about that this week, believe me. But see, the thing is about how much the volume of throws that Beck is going to make this year is not, I don't think the deciding factor is, hey, he wants to be a first-round draft pick. I think he can still accomplish that with efficiency, right? I don't think he needs to, throw it 65, 70% of downs to accomplish that. I think he can still be very efficient and raise his stock. But I think how much Carson Beck throws this year, that's going to depend a lot on how good Miami's defense is. Guys, last season, Miami was playing from behind a lot, which means they had to rely on winning shootouts because Cam Ward needed to make up for a lot of quick scores given up the other way. That gave the Hurricanes few options other than to put the game in Ward's hands. There were a lot of times, like in that Syracuse game, where Miami had to abandon the running game because they had to pass their way out of it. Same thing with the comebacks against Cal and the comebacks against Virginia Tech. Mario Cristobal would have loved to have, had big leads, run the football, wear down the opposing defense, play downhill, but you didn't have the option to do that a lot this year. So whether or not that happens this year, not only on Carson Beck, how much he wants to throw, the bigger factor is Miami going to be able to afford to run the football more? The defense needs to step up. Folks, I appreciate you guys stepping up and making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll have a Truth Teller Tuesday coming up tomorrow. And make sure for your next listen, you check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. As your favorite collegiate players like Cam Ward get ready for the next level, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'll talk to you tomorrow on a Truth Teller Tuesday right here on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.